I can't remember. It's like $120 million is what we would lose in revenue, you know?
See,
And
thank you for
yes,
putting it that, lose in revenue, not saying how much it would cost.
yes, 100%,
Drives
you
me
know?
crazy when
Yeah,
do you know how much it's going to cost to
right.
let people keep their own money?
Yeah, exactly. And they'll
No.
say that in committee.
I know they do. I know they've got a whole tax expenditure report, like tax expenditure.
Yeah, give me
what an
right.
Orwellian
Right,
phrase.
right.
No,
Yeah, so
that's
for me, like,
stupid. Mr. Quatrano, thank you very much for joining us here on the Robinson Report. This is Maine's fastest growing, most exciting podcast, and I think probably the largest Substack in the state of Maine currently, with no slight to the other upstart media outlets like Mr. Barry. The first thing I want to talk about is you guys have a big event coming up in August. You guys are bringing Charlie Kirk to town. I have to say, whenever I talk with college-age people, young people, Charlie Kirk is somebody that they're just enamored with. His videos are all over the place. He's made a very good name for himself by going into the Lion's Den, going onto college campuses and connecting with young people in a way that I think maybe the Republican Party or conservatives generally have struggled to do. So what made you want to bring in Charlie? What was that like, and what's the event going to be?
Thank you for having me, Steve. So the event's on August 2nd. It'll be in Old Orchard Beach at Dunegrass, and we can talk more specifics later. But generally the way this happened is we have mutual supporters, Turning Point USA and Maine Civic Action, and they connected us. They liked what we do over at Maine Civic Action. Actually, the nexus of the conversation is I want to overarching mission of trying to get us younger as a movement and actually get more women involved as well. I think if you look at any type of Republican election anywhere where we don't fare well, it's because we're not young enough and we don't engage suburban moms, I guess. So anyway, it was that literal phrase right there made a connection with them. The state of Maine has been on their radar as someplace where they want to have an official statewide chapter and they want to have 16 county chapters, and so that's how the conversation started. And I would say the trajectory of growth of our organization at Maine Civic Action is going extremely well. And they said, well, how can we help? And I said, well, I'd like to do a big event. And then they offered Charlie to come and speak to that. How do we get younger? How can we as conservatives get on campuses? And they've got a proven method. How do we get these people to challenge their thinking like Charlie does? And so it's a great opportunity for all of us conservatives in the state to have a group like that come in, partner up with us, and actually start to make a difference to these young people that we know are essentially getting brainwashed, to speak freely, So
yeah, I mean, they're getting brainwashed, but I also think that they're getting mugged by reality a little bit.
Yeah,
whether they're graduating from high school or college, they're looking around and they're like,
yeah.
Even me, my parents bought their house for $65,000, and the people who are graduating from college these days, they are not looking at those kind of opportunities. So I think that they're already questioning whether or not the knee-jerk liberalism is the best political path for them or for the country. So there's a huge opportunity there.
And they're more than likely not going to find work with their degrees when they graduate here in Maine and they're leaving.
You mean gender and women's studies isn't a profitable field these days?
No. It's a tight labor market on that specific.
I think maybe 90% of my friend group graduating from high school started out as sports management at Husson. Yeah, I think we satisfied the entire demand for sports management in New England for like 10 years. Yeah, not that any of them graduated, but
right.
So tell me a little bit about Maine Civic Action.
Sure.
I think we should also disclose you guys are a 501c4 organization, some kind of a relationship with the Maine Policy Institute and the Maine Wire and the Robinson Report are projects of the Maine Policy Institute. So technically we're different organizations, but I think we're colleagues. Yes. I guess it's fair to say. 100%, so part of the vast right-wing conspiracy in Maine, which I say is not nearly vast enough.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wish I had a quarter of the money they say that we get from whatever.
There's like six of us, but so can you just talk a little bit about what Maine Civic Action does?
Sure.
I know for the distinction between a 501c3 versus a 501c4 is that you guys can be a little bit more political, advocating for candidates, causes, ballot initiatives.
Sure.
So just talk with us a little bit about Maine Civic Action, what you guys do.
Sure. No, I appreciate the opportunity. Well, first I'd say it's my life's work. I've been involved in politics, conservative politics in Maine for I'm at the 20-year mark this year. Next year it'll be 21 years. And essentially what I found is there's a market for a consistent conservative movement in the state of Maine. What happens is over at the state party, whoever runs the state party is beholden to a state committee, which is a body of around 80 people. If we don't have anyone in the Blaine House, that's obviously vacant, no leadership there. So there tends to be turnover at the state party. And then also in the state house, right? Whoever's leading the Senate caucus or the Republican caucus, they have to win their own race. And then should they win their own race, then they have to run for leadership. So what happens is this turnover creates everyone wanting to recreate the wheel or bring their style or make their own changes when no one is actually, a football analogy, just matriculating the ball down the field. So I've been recruiting candidates for state rep, state senate, school board, town council for the past 20 years. The process has always been proprietary information. It shouldn't be, right? And these candidates are real. We're in the people business, right? And these are real people. They're overpromised. There's no cavalry coming in. You got to sit down with these folks. You got to train them how to engage government, school board, town council, train them on what to expect should they win when they serve. And so that's the mark that we've created over here at Maine Civic Action. So what I do is identify individuals. I try to get them active in their community, try to make them super activists, engage the school board, engage the town council, know your state rep, know your state senator, know what's going on up in Augusta. And those that are willing, we recruit them to run for office. And I sit down with them through the whole entire process, make sure they have the proper training, make sure they get on the ballot, make sure they have proper funding, making sure they're knocking on doors, bringing their message directly to the voter. We're there. We are allowed to do some restrictive political activity, as you mentioned. We'll invest in some of those races to the legal letter of the law. And what I like to say is once they win, we're right there with them through the whole process. So this is soup to nuts. This is from sitting down in their living room, getting them to engage government, ultimately trying to get them to run for office, getting them to win, and then getting them to serve correctly. And so we're just trying to keep building this momentum. I provide these trainings over and over again, how to be active town committees, how to be active groups, how to beat a town budget, how to win a school board majority, how to win a town council majority. And again, this kind of builds the bench, I like to say. We are in a crisis in this state. It is hard to get conservatives to run for office. The number one fear is being silenced, blackballed, boycotted, so these people need support, and you need to keep them engaged, win, lose, or draw. So in a nutshell, that's what we do, and we're growing, and we're having great success, and I'm very much looking forward to next year. And so that's what we do. We're constantly here. I'm not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere, and we need to keep moving this conservative movement forward, regardless of the turnover and all these other groups that supposedly own this turf of moving the conservative movement forward in the state of Maine.
So when you say that the process is proprietary information, can you explain a little bit more what exactly you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I've done this training in the past, and I'll do one actually this summer coming up of what it takes to sit down and ask somebody to run. Has somebody else already asked somebody to run in that seat? Who has been asked? You don't want an unintentional primary. Who holds this information? Who's responsible for this? And then there's this one component called placeholding, which a lot of people don't know about. When I explain this to people, they're amazed. So every even year in Maine, you have, if you belong to a party, Democrat, Republican, or any official party recognized by the Secretary of State, you have to be on the ballot by March 15th. If you do not have somebody from your party on the March 15th with some very obscure provisions, it goes unfilled, right? And so typically what happens is if we can't find a candidate or somebody who really legitimately wants to win, we'll go out and we'll ask somebody to placehold. And so you get them on the ballot by the March 15th deadline. Their name appears on the June primary ballot, and then they will drop after the June primary ballot, and you have about another 2.5 months to find a quote-unquote real candidate who wants to run and win for the seat. It's common practice on the left. It's common practice on the right. It is 100% legal. But when I explain this to people, their mind is blown. This is part of the process. And so what this does simply is as opposed to the March 15th deadline, if you find a placeholder, it gets you almost to the end of July, almost to the first week of August. So it buys you this additional time to keep searching for the right candidate. So it's things like that where this
it's
knowledge...
just like a detail of the process that, if somebody wanted to run, it might not necessarily be... Those deadlines aren't slapping you in the face. And
Right.
there's really not like a website where you can go to where a lot of this stuff is made clear
Sure.
or laid out. I
Yeah.
mean, all the state websites suck, frankly,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this information does seem to be not broadly available.
So one of the things is like, if I'm up against the March 15th deadline, and let's say I'm recruiting for a seat that we have a chance of flipping and getting to conservative hands, so it's a highly targeted seat, and we're up against the March 15th deadline. This has happened so many times it'll blow your mind. It's like March 8th. We've got 7 days and we've got nobody. And then people will give me names of people who might placehold. So now I'm a week from the deadline and I am pitching someone on this process of placeholding. And so I've done trainings in the past where I've been like, this needs to go out. I need a list of names of people who will placehold, not people I need to pitch on what the process is and then sell them on just placeholding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Everyone should know this process. So what I've challenged groups in all these districts, all the House districts and the state Senate districts, is give me a list of 5 or 6 people that will placehold. Like I emergency break glass and I say, Steve, I need you to placehold. I'll be by. You sign the paperwork. We'll get the signatures. We'll get you on the ballot. You'll placehold. And you're like, yep, I know the drill. Not anybody, hardly anybody knows this who's not like insiders like us. And the more that we have that, these people become involved. You'd be amazed by some of these people who placehold. They step up. They're taking one for the team. And then they're like, you know what? I was thinking about, I'll stay on and go, Maybe not everyone's ideal first choice candidate, but all of a sudden, you know what I mean? People are active, they're involved, they realize they're taking one for the team, and this is how you just keep that momentum going, as opposed to, we have a seat we could have won that's completely unfilled because Mike Quatrano couldn't talk some guy in a place holding 7 days before the deadline,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I guess just for the sake of making your life easier, if someone's watching or listening to this and they want to volunteer to be a placeholder, or they've been thinking about running, how should they get in touch with you?
You can, my email address, mike@mainecivicaction.org. You can reach out there. We also have a contact page on the website, which is maincivicaction.org. Absolutely. We're always looking for people, and you can get involved in many ways. Another thing I like to say is some of these districts are hard to get signatures. In the House, you need 25. I believe in the Senate, you need 100 to get on the ballot. I should have a list of people who will sign, a petition to get someone on the ballot without having to pitch them. You know what I mean? All we're looking for is conservative candidates. I don't care if you're an independent, a registered Republican, a libertarian, anything, or if there's any left, even a conservative Democrat that doesn't, I don't know if there's any left.
I don't know what I mean?
But there needs to be a list of people who understand that signing this petition just puts them on the ballot doesn't mean I'm voting for them. You know what I mean? So anyway, if you're willing to be a signatory on a petition, are you willing to placehold, or you want to volunteer or get active, by all means, mike@maincivicaction.org, or you can go to the website and just reach out to the contact page. So
now, you said that there's, you're spending a lot of time talking with people trying to convince them to run, and they've got a list of reasons of why they don't want to run, and why they can't risk it. It's something that I've also heard too. You briefly mentioned the fear of being, canceled, so to speak. I think cancel culture is kind of waning, but it's still, the culture of fear and retribution in this state is huge. And I think Governor Mills has exacerbated it. Aaron Fry, Shenna Bellows have exacerbated it. The COVID-19 lockdowns really empowered some of the worst people in society to become petty little tyrants. Sitting at home on their computers, doing a brigade on someone's Google review page, leaving nasty reviews for their business because they want lower taxes or something. 100%. So I think that fear is definitely very real. What do people say to you, when they're good candidates, they agree, we need limited government, lower taxes, and respect for individual liberty. But hey, I'm not going to run because I'm worried about what?
Yeah, sure. Well, typically it's impacting their business. We were kind of talking about this off the air a little bit. As a limited pool of people who have the time to campaign and the time to serve. So typically that's an objection. But I know before I sit down and ask anyone to run for office, just like any sales job, right? It doesn't start until they say no, right? You got to overcome objections. And I'm not giving the hard sell. You know what I mean? I'm just telling them. So, but I know when I sit down with somebody, they're going to have 5 things they're going to say right off the bat I know they're going to say, I need to talk to my spouse. I need to talk to my job or see if my job can be covered. How much time do I have to campaign? How much time do I have to serve? And how much does it pay? Okay. So I know those 5 questions are coming. If they don't ask those 5 questions, I almost got a concern. You know what I mean? Like, I want them to flesh it out. So if you get by those and then people start wondering, does it impact my business? Typically, I'm like, you'd be amazed at the amount of people that would be happy that you stand up and run, or typically the candidates we've had before, no disrespect to them, but they didn't run really a great campaign, and maybe they suffer from name recognition. Maybe they didn't put the time and effort in, but you'd be amazed at how many people will support you. I'm not saying, you going public isn't going to bring some negativity to impact your business, but you'd be amazed at the support you will get. It's a double-edged sword, so to speak. Probably not the best pitch, but if we find a good candidate and a good seat, and we can win, and that incumbent is voting horribly, be the people's champion. Step one, step up. It's time to serve the state, time to serve the country. We need your help right now. If they got kids, I always tell them I got a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old kid, and I say this all the time. You've heard me say it. 2,789 votes out of 1 million registered voters. 2,789 votes, and conservatives will be in charge of both of those chambers over there. So just having a better candidate, a good candidate, somebody who's willing to step up and take on the fight, you'd be amazed at how much support you get. Doesn't always work, but it is a real fear, and that's one of the things, going back to Charlie Kirk, is we're trying to get people to shake off that you're being silenced. Let these people speak. It's okay to exchange thoughts and ideas and not agree. We can't tolerate people worrying about their business and being boycotted. So it's a risk they have to take, and I try to be there through the whole process to assist them should they decide to run. A big part of it is supporting these folks, being on the phone, being responsive, making sure you're taking their phone calls, meeting with them, keeping them on track, and a lot of that's not done. So if I can convey that to them, that if you're willing to take this risk, step up and run. I'm here through the whole process, and it's not going to be easy. It's not for the faint-hearted, but you can actually change the way this state's running, So I just try to kind of tap into that passion, if it's there. Some people aren't receptive to it, but some are,
Well, I think that, I guess the theory that I've had for a while is that in part because COVID was happening, but it probably started before that, was that the gay race communists is what I call it. It's the term that some other people on social media came up with, and Tucker Carlson has popularized it a little bit, but you know what I'm talking about when I say gay race communists. It's like the 25 or 30% of the state who are just obsessively focused on race, gender, whatever. They are the ones who have engaged in this bullying behavior to kick good people out of public space over minor disagreements about public policy. Like, the classic example is, a dad who shows up to a school board meeting and is like, hey, I'd prefer you guys not put those creepy porn books in the elementary school, which is a very modest request. To 15 to 20 years ago, it would not even been something controversial. But now, because of the gay race communists, you're suddenly a transphobe and a homophobe and a misogynist and all these other bad, nasty words, and you've got to be destroyed. And, they've got to, it's like, 30 kids sitting at home on computers, but they've got a way of harassing people on social media.
The vocal minority.
Very vocal and intimidating minority. And I think that they were very successful in raising the cost of participation in public life for conservatives. And so if you own a business, or you've got your kids in school, and you look at the prospect of running for school board or a state rep office, and you're like, I'm gonna have to put up with these screechy, howling harpies calling me a monster and a fascist just for saying hey, we should do something different because what we've been doing for the last 6 years isn't working. They're gonna say no. I'm gonna take care of my family and go to church and go golfing with my buddies. I've got a lot of better things that I could do. So I think it's a tremendous obstacle to overcome. And I don't know exactly, because it's a cultural problem. Really, it's not necessarily like a political or educational problem. It's a cultural problem. So I guess in addition to educating people, what else can you do other than that? I guess I've settled on, you got to be able to talk about it. And you've got to be able to call it out, and laugh at it and mock these silly little people with pink hair.
Well, down in
their furry costumes.
A few months ago, and I think you were on this a little bit, down in Elliott and South Berwick School District down there. Something very similar where they're looking at some of the books, and they're like, these people are homophobes, and they're we cannot let this hate in our community. And I'm gonna make this guy's life miserable. I'm gonna I am going to bring all this, and we're going to force this guy to leave because we will not tolerate hate.
Intolerance will not be tolerated.
Yes, you know.
But that's their attitude.
Yeah,
though.
right.
They're like
right.
some of the most hateful, miserable people, but they have succeeded to a remarkable degree in bullying people out of school board races, town council races, because they've lost the ability just to have like a disagreement over policies. Like let's just have a reasonable debate like adults over the age at which you can expose kids to strap on dildo butt sex.
Right.
You know,
but a bit
like when did it become just like unquestionably morally good to expose kids to like cartoon images of strap-on sex?
Yeah.
Like that's their position, and the conservatives are the ones who are made to feel like they're crazy.
Yeah. And there's a big part of it too. It's you know how Maine, the state, is one big town. So like it really depends on where you're from. There are some rural areas where it's a very tight knit community, and that vocal minority has way more swing than it should, and that's different versus more a coastal or a closer or a highly more populated town. Because I like to say to some of these people to kind of again there's no silver bullet to be like disregard all that. I don't care if your business suffers. You need to run. It's really their decision. But, it's like, what's a worst case scenario? They're saying some stuff on a Facebook page. They're talking about you at a meeting that you're not at, with very, very few exceptions. They're not going to pick it in your front steps. I mean, Laura Libby was all over the whole national news, and, there's like 3 or 4 protesters in front of her house.
A couple of dead fish.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So you kind of try to, go right to their worst case of fear and just try to be like, the worst case scenario. Your life's not in danger, nothing's going to happen. But again, just to go back to what we said, most of them, if they are at a job that they feel like that would not be received well, or if they do own a small business, I kind of compartmentalize off to, okay, let's dig at that for a few minutes. Do you feel like you're going to get treated badly at your job, or you're going to be on undue scrutiny, or what part of your business you think this is going to affect? So, it's really on a case-by-case basis where they live, what their community is, what their job is, or maybe what their business is, and again, there's no silver bullet. And like I say, anyone who runs for office to me is a hero. I know that sounds so cliche, but I really appreciate these people who step up, put their name on a ballot, take those arrows, take all the arrows out of everyone's quiver, and then when they win, you serve correctly, and then you're running again should you want to from a place of being incumbency and making change from the inside. It's like, you can try to burn the castle down from the outside, but you do a much better job of burning it down when you're inside the castle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and it's also it's much easier to stop some of these insane school policies from coming into being than it is to go and like rally a movement to overturn them.
Sure.
If you're on the school board and you can just say no, that's gross and silly. Why would we be distributing porn to kids? No, let's not do that. It's easier to do that than appearing to be like the angry mob of parents who are there to ask for the repeal of a policy. And the other thing is, I think, unlike the dark days of COVID, the Maine wire is a little bit bigger, a little bit different than it was during those years, and the whole social media mob can work the other way.
Sure.
And I don't mean like leaving negative reviews for left-wing businesses, not that they really have businesses. They're all taxpayer-supported welfare queens, but I think the conservative movement broadly needs to be better at using digital means of communication, but can also go and leave reviews for these businesses to help them out, or can just patronize their businesses. There should be, I would think that there's enough economic demand and an economic power and economic might amongst conservatives in the state that it would be a benefit for somebody who's willing to take on that burden.
And you
of running
saw
for
that,
office.
wasn't there a list of businesses that were staying open despite during COVID?
There's like glimpses of that. Janet Mills went around and like shot all of the business owners and forced them to move to New Hampshire or something. But I think that you can kind of sense that society's changing a little bit. Like the cancel culture, the power of that is waning, and in large part, I think, to President Trump winning the election in 2024. I think that was a seminal moment. But there's also, smaller victories like, Laurel Libby standing up, refusing to back down, and bend the knee to the rainbow bullies in Augusta. Like it's small little acts of bravery like that have a way of snowballing. And it's like, look at Laurel. I mean, she got every nasty invective in the world thrown at her. You know, if
yeah.
they could have locked her up, if they could have found a way to lock her up,
certainly
they would have.
Yeah, right.
And what's the result? She's like more liked and famous than ever.
Sure.
Social media platform, she's like bigger than the Bangor Daily News now. It's like
Right.
they just gave her such a remarkable gift that made her megaphone a million times
right,
bigger. So
right.
nice job, Ryan. But hopefully that message is sinking in to more people. And honestly, I would feel that same way about Democrats. Like
Right.
nobody should feel like they can't run for public office or be involved in public life because
Sure.
like some loser is going to threaten their business or
Right.
threaten their family or something. That's like fundamentally un-American.
Right, right.
But it seems to be the strength of liberalism in Maine.
Right, right. Well, I think there's an overarching thing here too, is that, we're so polarized as a country, right versus left, right? That, this idea that there's just bunch in the middle that feel like their vote doesn't count, it doesn't matter, they're all crooks, and so, it's good to see. I look at it like the economic drivers. Like we across the state, I think there was like 6 or 8 budgets that got voted down. That's the most I can remember in a June odd year election.
I was going to say there were like 6 or 8 that got passed in Augusta.
Yeah,
instead of just one budget. Took me a minute to figure out what you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about at town levels.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, when people are seeing their property taxes going up and they want to do something about it, you and I know the number one driver of increased property taxes is the school board budgets. And then you peel
Not
away
just the school board budgets, but the administrative bloat.
Yes, 100%.
It's
Yes,
like
yes.
your property taxes are going up because we have to pay the social workers to come in and secretly groom your kids
Right,
into
right.
transvestites.
So yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yes. Well, they see that once they see the money, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's what's getting their attention. And so I think it's on us as like political insiders to make it a little bit more appealing for that. And as we go do just a few minutes ago, they don't want that nastiness, so, but yet they know they have to do something, and I think that's huge. And what they've done over there in the State House these past 2 weeks is awful. This is the worst I have ever seen it. They either don't care or they're so sure that the midterm elections are already in the bag. If you look at like national geopolitical landscape, right? We have all 3 chambers down in D.C. You know what I mean? And so laws of averages is we'll lose one or both the House or the Senate. And so another red wave that isn't going to come, and they're just brazenly doing this stuff. I mean, all these tax increases, a sanctuary state, and
let's talk about the session. I mean, because they're acting like they never have to worry about another election.
Right.
It's almost, my tinfoil hat is saying that, geez, were they that successful in registering the non-citizens to vote in Portland and Lewiston that they just don't have to worry about re-elections?
Right. We got the numbers.
Yeah, it's very, very suspicious how brazenly they're clinging to, like, we talked about Laurel. I don't think that the trans sports thing is something that you can build a red wave election on. It's a polarizing issue. It's an 80-20 issue, and it's gotten a lot of attention. But I don't think that it's something that like conservatives could win the House or Senate just based off of being on the right side of that issue. But the fact that the Democrats have seen the polling on this, and I'm sure they've done their own internal polling on this, and just been like, nope, we're not budging.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah,
it's very, very weird. And Shenna the other day was asked straight up, like, this is a really unpopular issue. Mm-hmm. Is this a hill that you're going to die on? And she was like, yes.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like, do you know what democracy means, lady? Or is it just like something you print on T-shirts?
Yeah.
Because you just said like, yeah, we're willing to impose a fringe minority view on the rest of the state.
Yeah, I know, and it does really honestly make you wonder what are they kowtowing to? Is it the progressives versus? I don't even know if you want to say moderate. There's no part of that party that is moderate anymore. But I guess the super progressive versus the not so progressive.
It's like the socialists. It's like the
Yes.
socialists versus the far left liberals.
Sure.
Like in the polling we've done. So I guess this would have been 2023. We polled some education issues. Yeah. And it was stuff like, would you be in favor of more school transparency, like curriculums posted online?
Sure.
There was huge bipartisan support for those bills. Yeah. Of course, they failed.
Right.
But it was also, do you think schools should get back to the basics, or should they talk more about gender, critical race theory? So I forget exactly what the questions were, but they were all along those lines. And what you found consistently looking at the questions and answers all together was that there was just this like tiny minority of 30 to 35% of liberals, predominantly in southern Maine, predominantly women, who had views like schools should have more control over children than parents.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is wild,
it's
crazy stuff.
Just drop your kid off and don't mind what goes on.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
We got this, and
But it's the I guess the paradox of Maine politics for the last 6 years is that it's those fringe minority views that are being reflected in our politics.
Yes, right.
Like the late term abortion, the trans bills,
Sure.
Taxes soak the rich, more government, all of that. Those are like fringe positions, according to the polling, but they're the dominant political platform of the people in charge of Augusta.
And
it's a weird thing.
It's on us as conservatives in this state. We are not translating that into electoral wins. They are just better at it, and shame on us. And as you know, with the Maine Wire, the liberal media in this state is never going to get us any type of earned media. You know what I mean? Short of them raking us over the coals. So you have to get that messaging directly out to the voter, and then God forbid should I throw this out there and make sure these people go vote. And that's one of the things why I'm passionate about Maine Civic Action is you have to put these things in place. You know what I mean? You have to get people to go vote early. This fear of conservatives of something's going to happen to their vote if they vote early and then they don't vote on election day. And how do we put an operation in place that gets turnout high? And before you can even get to that, you got to identify your supporters, and that means who are your supporters? You got to make sure they have the information in front of them so they vote correctly. So you got to persuade them with good messaging and get it in front of them, and that's the problem.
I think that was a huge failure of Trump in 2020 because he openly disparaged mail-in voting, and I think encouraged his people to vote on election day. So he helped fuel some of those maybe natural latent concerns that conservatives would have over mail-in voting. But I think he's turned a corner on that. And it's probably in part why 2024 turned out differently.
Right.
I
mean, we need to tighten up the process, especially with the current Secretary of State. I mean, come on, and I know you're all over that 8 ways to Sunday, So I'm not saying it's by I spent some of my formative years out in Vegas, and they actually have early voting. So you're actually feeding it doesn't go into an envelope. You're feeding it into the machine in front of a warden clerk, 40 days before the election. I don't know if that's better than what we have now, but I understand if someone's got concerns that they go down and they vote and it gets sealed in an envelope and thrown in a box for 3 weeks.
Or for a little while, weren't they putting R on Republican envelopes and D on Democrat envelopes? What possible purpose could there be for that?
Right.
And then they vote against surveillance cameras for ballot drop boxes.
Yes,
It's well, I mean, what?
Well, there's no common sense in that at all, right?
I think Bellows said that if you put surveillance cameras on drop boxes, then conservatives would go harass people who were dropping off votes. And I thought, well, I mean, you don't have to live stream the cameras, right? You just keep track of the footage in case that there's an issue and you have to go back and look at it.
You think they'd want the cameras more than anybody else would, right?
For sure.
Just to make sure that those ballots are counted.
It's very strange. But I think that there's maybe a structural disadvantage that conservatives have because they're mostly in towns that are spread out. It's harder for them to vote, and it's harder to canvass too. If you've got a neighborhood of new Mainers in Lewiston or Auburn or Portland, you can go to one public housing complex and canvass 1,000 voters in 2 hours. Whereas if you're trying to cover Piscataquis County, it's going to take you a couple of days to get around.
That's a mile between houses, and each driveway is 300 yards long.
And you might get shot. Also,
I got some stories.
You want to be careful knocking on random doors.
Are a common occurrence,
Yes.
But just to go back, I mean, you're so right. We're being dominated by this uber left socialist communist wing in this party, and they are doing some kind of Svengali thing over the elected Democrats, and they're kowtowing to these people. And I'll keep saying it over and over. Shame on us. I mean, what they're doing right now in that building over there today, what they've done last week. If we can't translate this into electoral wins, maybe we don't deserve to win. You know what I mean? Because that's how pissed off and passionate I am about it. I do this all the time. You're trying to get people to be like, you got to kind of dial it down. We're in a people business. I hate to have to say this, but it's like you got to kind of win hearts and minds. I'm like Bill Clinton. I feel your pain. You know what I mean? Like you have to be able to engage people in good dialogue to get them to be like, this is not a rich, fat, cigar smoking, white oil baron Republican Party. Okay, this is someone who wants to protect your money. Who wants to? If you travel anywhere across the country, you see cranes across the sky as they're experiencing incredible boom and growth, and we can't build one apartment complex that anybody normally can move into. You understand what I'm saying? It's either not in my backyard or it's for low income housing, and the average person wants to sell their house but can't because they have no place to move to, and there's no places to rent. And then when you keep digging down, it's because the property taxes are too damn high. It's like that guy who ran for the rent's too damn high.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and so you got to use that as the catalyst to get to the everyday person and have that good message to being like, they're in control. They've been in control for 6 years. Okay, we hold no levers of power here. We need you to show up and vote correctly. Okay, so what they're doing doesn't work. This is the definition of insanity.
Yeah, just vote to protect yourself. Right. I mean, like the government is coming and stealing from you. And not even providing anything half of value in return.
Sure,
it's like you're not even getting anything for the big government.
Yeah, I know.
It'd be one thing if we had like big government, but it wasn't. You'd prefer your big government not to be so corrupt and worthless.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a small.
A few years ago, I can't remember how it went down, but instead of a tax cut, everyone got a check in the mail. Do you remember?
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and at the time that was very controversial, right? I'd take that, man. You know what I mean? I'll probably get punched in the face for saying that, but I'd take that now. I want to see some of this money sent back to everybody, as opposed to we don't even know where it goes. If you're on like the Governor Mills email newsletter that she sends out, I mean, I've done it a few times. I haven't done it in the past few months or 6 months or so, but $10 million to the town of Lewiston for an economic development program that's going to identify, single unwed mothers and teach them how to, you look at this, $50 million for this economic development plan. Where the hell does that money go?
Oh, it's all just a scam.
Yeah.
It's one scam after another, and all they're doing is pumping money into NGOs that turn around and help get Democrats elected.
Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Like, we've laid out how like the community health outreach worker program. It was, we're going to help with COVID, so we need to funnel money into these left-wing NGOs that like help Democrats get elected.
Right.
They're all in the same office building, 501 Forest Ave in Portland. And there's like some nonprofits that work there that bill Medicaid for a ton of money, but then all these political groups are working out of there as well. And it's like what you just said. I mean, they use COVID money, they use Lewiston shooting money. They just gave out a grant. Edward at the Maine Wire reported on this. They just give out $100,000 to fight opioid addiction in the Somali American community. And I was like, geez, based on my experience, fentanyl isn't really a problem in the Somali community. It's just like culturally not something that's a big issue for them. So I had him dig in and see what the overdose rates were by race and ethnicity. And it's like 98, 99% of all overdoses are white people. There's very few, there's almost, in most years, there's zero, Somalis who are overdosing. So why are we spending $100,000 on a problem that doesn't exist? Well, the answer is because it's not about solving a problem. It's about funneling money into an organization that's in line with the regime right now. And it's like issue after issue, domestic violence prevention. There's no issue that is too sacred or too important to be protected from a hijacking, to be put in service to keeping the progressives in power in this state. Which again, it's a structural advantage that they have, because there's no like Republican or conservative analog to that.
Yeah, there's not. And
what even would you like? Say you had a Republican governor who wanted to pump money into an NGO. It's like, are they going to give a grant to Mike Quatrano to pass out Narcan?
Let's discuss. Hey man, all you got to do is do what they did, right? That's a great question, but it's like again, to me, it really comes down to elections. I hate to keep harping on that, but if we can get a conservative in that Blaine house, that stops almost immediately, right? Even a somewhat conservative person would take a look at that, as opposed opposed to, whoever the left is going to put up right now. I mean, right now it's
or even just an attorney general who's more interested in enforcing the laws than in boinking the help.
Yeah, right.
That would be a big benefit. So this session, I guess we went through the 131st, and they did all the wacky trans bills, trans trafficking, drugs for 15 and 16-year-olds without their parents' knowledge or consent, a bunch of ridiculous far left stuff that 10 years ago, if you'd thought about the prospect of Janet Mills as governor, you'd be like, no, she's like from Farmington.
Yeah,
she's a conservative Democrat. Like, she's mean, but there's no way she's going to go for these crazy ideas.
Right.
You would be surprised by that, but so they did everything that they could, like 9-month abortion. They went so far left, and I thought foolishly after November happened, I was like, well, I wonder what they're gonna do, because they've done everything. They've spent as much money as they possibly can. Taxes are just about as high as they can get before you reach the point where things start to break and your revenues you're collecting actually start to go down. We're probably going to pass the Laffer curve as a result of these tax increases if we haven't already, I imagine. But I was foolish to think that they wouldn't find new and interesting ways to ruin life in Maine.
I mean, they're taking us behind the woodshed, man. There's no doubt about it.
So just from take it from the top of the legislative session. I know you spend a lot of time in the State House. You talk a lot with lawmakers and politicos. So, what's the podcast Reader's Digest version of what happened in the legislative session?
It's hard for these people, man. It's hard to get whacked over the head like that. You know what I mean? To be staying up all night. You know what I mean? And then you have to go into the next morning, and then you do it again. For me, it's at a personal level. I just feel honestly, it sucks, man. And it's on us, man, to convert this into wins. So they're just hammering it. I don't even know if they're running more bills today, and then they're going to have another 10-day window, and this is like what is lost on, the majority budget, and they had adjourned sine die, and then the governor says now we're in an emergency session, so we're in an emergency session, so they don't really have to end today, so I want to see, unfortunately, how bad it gets, what they're going to run today. I think that, the sanctuary state bill is awful, missing the banning biological men from female sports. I mean, that's awful. These tax increases, we'll see. I mean, if they're in the budget, then they're in the budget, man. And then she's a liar because she said she wasn't going to do any tax increases. But
she said she wasn't going to change the abortion law.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So they just lie to our face. So it's just, there's so many awful things to. It's the worst I've ever seen it, man. So I know we were talking about ranked choice voting. They're trying to redefine what plurality means. That's what they're doing now. They're redefining words that are in the Constitution and finding a state law that will redefine the Constitution without changing the Constitution. I mean, that's what they're doing. They twist the laws so much and twist the procedures, and they're supposed to be done until the next day, so they go at 12:01 a.m. It just sucks up there if you're a conservative, and so this session has been the worst, and I just hope it ends today. But I don't know if you're hearing anything if it's going to end today.
I haven't heard anything.
And this ranked choice voting thing, I know we were talking about that. I hope to God our Supreme Court, upholds what their original ruling was, or at least their advisory opinion. But if they do that, then we got ranked choice voting in all the elections, in 2026. So again, they're redefining how elections are performed, how it's done. Is it in their favor? It remains to be seen. But most conservatives aren't fans of ranked choice voting. We've done, Maine Policy Institute's done many reports on that. It's confusing. There are exhausted ballots. Not every vote is counted.
Yeah, it's confusing. Yes. It's costly. Yeah. And for the governor's race, the state senate race, and the House races, it's unconstitutional.
Right.
There was the advisory opinion, but the esteemed legal scholar Janet Mills was one of the first to write this advisory opinion. And I mean, she, in that opinion, she gets into the history of how our elections came to be plurality based.
Sure.
And it wasn't a random accident. It's not just an accident of history that our elections came to be this way. It was a very deliberate choice, and would require a constitutional amendment.
Right.
I wonder though, on the process stuff, if you work adjacent to politics, you cover politics, you kind of understand how extreme and absurd it is to do a majority budget.
Right.
But if you're just 98, 99% of the state, working day to day, trying to pay your, $6,000 a month electricity bill.
Sure.
You hear majority budget, you're like, well, what is that?
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, they're in the majority. Like, they should be the ones who are passing the bills. Like, why is that a problem?
Sure.
So I wonder, how effective are the procedural things about like on a campaign trailer and messaging, or is that something that conservatives just have to say, like, yeah, it sucks, but stop talking about it because no one cares.
Right. You do get a lot, but you got there's this old saying, if you say the phrase "we need to educate the voter," you've already lost the election. I disagree with that sometimes, because you got to have a long runway to explain it, and you just need to say. That's why, like, sometimes I'm like, have a bill that's a tax cut. We've done this before at Maine Policy Institute. It was the smallest tax cut we could come up with. It was 0.10% for the top bracket, 0.25% of the middle bracket, and 0.5% for the lowest bracket. I think the note that came with it was, I can't remember, it's like $120 million is what we would lose in revenue,
Thank you for putting it that, lose in revenue, not saying how much it would cost.
Yes, 100%.
Drives me crazy. Do you know how much it's going to cost to let people keep their own money?
Yeah, exactly. And they'll say that in committee.
I know they do. I know they've got a whole tax expenditure report. Like, tax expenditure?
Yeah, give me
what an Orwellian phrase.
Right.
No,
yeah. So for me, like,
stupid.
Tactically, I wanted that bill to get run, and I wanted a roll call in both chambers, and it just didn't happen because of the processes, because we weren't in charge. But something as simple as that, as we ran what we considered one of the smallest tax cuts ever, and in the roll call, you will see everybody on the left voted against it. Therefore, when we go into campaign mode and we go out into the field, we can say, these people want to cut your taxes. We want you to keep more of your hard-earned money in your dollars. So if you have a vehicle like that, then it becomes a little bit easier. Still complicated to educate the voter over, like, these budgets where they're blowing up and raising taxes and we're spending beyond our means, all under the balanced budget. There are no conservative votes on that. That is one party rule. They've been in charge for 6 years. This is them. Is the state of Maine on the right track, the wrong track? Do you think we can do better? If you think we can do better, they've been in charge. Look, they won't even give you a measly, $7 a month tax cut for you to keep in because you're in the lowest tax bracket. So sometimes you need those vehicles and roll calls, so I can go in and say, your sitting state rep, Steve Robinson, voted to increase your taxes 7 times and voted against a tax cut 3 times, vote for Mike Quatrano. He will keep more money in your pocket, so you kind of need those vehicles or something simple like that. And then when you're engaging the voter, maybe you can get down to the path of like, we haven't been in charge. It's been 6 years. It's time for a change. You know what I mean? It's like, can you do better?
I just think I've heard from some members who complain about the way that the process is being abused, because very obviously, like, the state constitution, the rules for the House, whatever the traditions and the rules that have governed the way the state House operates, they basically, like, held it down and contorted it and twisted it and, like, maximally exploited every possible advantage they can to exert power. And it's almost admirable the way that they've done it, just ruthlessly exercising power. But I just don't think it's a very, like, open and persuasive thing for people, because they just think, well, yeah, I mean, they won the election. Shouldn't they have their way? Right. I don't think that conservatives would turn around and do the same thing. Right. They wouldn't as ruthlessly use power. They'd be like, well, no, we're going to turn the other cheek. And
we got to extend the olive branch.
We got to get all the stakeholders. I was here for 2010. Like, I saw it. Yeah, it was great. How'd that work out for you?
Yeah, sure.
But if you look at what they've done this session, it started, I guess, the first event that I really vividly remember was the paid leave tax. Started coming into effect. This is a 1% tax on paychecks. This is like as close to taxing, like, just working people generally. The EBT Americans aren't paying this tax generally. The blue-haired retirees down on the coast who vote for Democrats and donate to Democrats, they're not paying this tax. This is a tax on working people's paychecks and small businesses. They actually held a press conference, not for, like, the start of the benefit, but for the start of the tax.
Right.
Which is it was so weird to me, and we covered it, just like videotaped the press conference, asked a question, and of course there were a bunch of lies told during that. But it struck me as unusual that there wasn't more of a reaction from elected Republicans, like, seizing on the absurdity of that.
Sure.
And then just a few days ago, the same people were, posting celebratory Instagram pictures, signing, this budget is finally coming into law.
Yeah,
and it's
I saw that.
more taxes on poor people.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like, why are, what's, like the Democrats are literally spiking the football because they're raising taxes on poor people.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like there's...
Well, you're not doing enough. We're not doing enough, man. You know what I mean?
Of course.
I got
to do a little bit more.
Socially, outside of work, I'm the conservative guy in the group, right? I'm surrounded by a bunch of freaking commies, you know what I mean? And, they'll say things like, I'd rather pay higher taxes than give to charity, you know what I mean? And I'm like, they can't deliver the mail. They can't fix potholes. They're barely educating our children. And you'd rather just hand over this money, no questions asked? Well, we need to do more. We need to do more as a society, And it's like, you just got to break that mold, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's so hard to do, but again, it translates to electoral wins. You got to get in there and be like, geez, man, how long is it going to take? The construction on the roads down in Saco is closing businesses. Businesses are closing in Saco, Biddeford, because it's one way south down Route 1. You cannot go north on Route 1 through Biddeford and Saco. And it's like, that should have been done years ago. They can't even pave the roads, man. Why would you want to give them more money? We can't even pay our own transportation bill. We got a bond, despite all the little changes we do around the end. So it's like, there's nothing wrong with not trusting your government. There's nothing wrong with, saying like, somebody else could do better.
There's something wrong with trusting your government.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you should be implicitly
questioning. It can be done better, And then I had to set up that paid family medical. I was doing it, and it was a pain in the ass, man. And I'm thinking of all these people, all these small business owners that are going to deal with the administrative burden, and then plus the tax itself. Like, who is this benefiting? You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know where their brain's coming from that, where they're spiking the football on us and they're saying, hey, look at us, look what we just did. And all these taxes they just passed just now, it's like, who is this benefiting? Who is it? It's not me. It's not you. We're not benefiting shit, pardon my French, And it's
it's going to be, the paid family leave thing is going to be a disaster.
Right.
Like all of the large companies are fleeing whatever this amorphous, someday maybe it'll come into existence, government program by a yet to be named third party administrator. Like, no one wants that. They want a little bit of stability and confidence and an understanding of what's going to happen. So all of the businesses are going to private plans, which leaves the least insurable, most risky people who are going to go into the government program.
Sure.
And so the rates are going to go up. And then they've got a mechanism to increase the taxes.
And what are they doing for health care? We don't have enough providers. It's too expensive. Premiums are ridiculous. Your premiums, quite frankly, is extortion because you got to get past your deductible before your health insurance even kicks in. They're not paying Medicare. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's Medicaid.
Medicaid,
but I mean, Medicaid
saying.
Expansion is at the root of all the problems.
And
that's
we did a study on it. It's like chiropractor. I mean, you get full. It's a full pull here in Maine, But what are they doing? Where's the spiking of the football that they make it easier and less expensive for us to access health care? One of the bills we were working on that goes down every year is trying to reform or repeal certificate of need. It's a group of hospital presidents that sit inside HHS, and anytime a hospital wants to spend more than $1 million, they got to get approval from the Certificate of Need Board. It's chaired by Maine Medical Center in Portland, which has a beautiful, they're constantly pumping hundreds of millions into that place, and it's ever expanding, and all these rural hospitals have to keep shutting down, can't expand. They'll buy helicopters. I see Life Flight coming to Maine Med in Portland from every direction. The helipads and helicopters are where it's at. That's, you have a problem up in Aroostook County, they're going to slap you on a helicopter and come down, God forbid, that hospital expand up there to offer, neonatal needs or a brain unit or a heart unit or whatever. So they're doing nothing for that, and it's just dead silence. You know what I mean?
So I think just to explain for people who aren't totally aware of Certificate of Need, this is basically like a monopolistic protection for current healthcare, the hospitals.
Yes.
So if you wanted to open up a new hospital in Waterville, you basically have to get approval from the current hospitals.
Yes.
It'd be like if you're trying to open up a restaurant in town, all the other restaurants have to agree that there's a need for you to open your restaurant. And surprise, they're like, no, we've looked it over. We've looked over the numbers. You can't open that up. Rather than just having free market competition.
Sure.
I've said before that I think one of LePage's biggest mistakes is paying off the hospitals.
Yeah,
I know that was a huge initiative, and it was just like a business mentality of, we have this debt. There's been bad government in the past. We need to pay this debt. But look where it got the hospitals.
Right.
Look where it got the state. Look where it got the governor.
Right.
Did the hospitals turn around and say, you know what, maybe we're going to not be, reflexively liberal and not donate to these Democrats? No, as soon as that check cleared, they turned around and went right back in line with the progressives and started supporting them. And now the Medicaid debt is back up. They supported Medicaid expansion, and now they're whining about more Medicaid debt. It's like, well, what did you think was going to happen?
Right.
Medicaid was this huge problem for you, and the debt was not being paid.
Sure.
And then they proposed to quadruple the program.
Yeah.
What were you expecting?
And then,
you guys are the people who can understand the certificate of need and whether we need hospitals.
Sure.
Why couldn't you do some analysis on what was going to happen with Medicaid expansion?
Yeah,
it's very strange.
And we're the devil for saying, able-bodied, childless adults, shouldn't qualify for this program. Go out and get a job or get for yourself. I mean, well, we all have to do it. You know what I mean? If you don't qualify, and it's like that's a damn good place to start. But how do you engage in that conversation with these hospitals? You know what I mean? I'm with you. If they weren't getting paid, maybe they stopped providing the services. But ultimately, is that the solution? Get rid of the expansion that passed by the ballot initiative, right? And get rid of definitely the able-bodied, childless adults. Start from there. Help the most needy, and get rid of the expansion and just base coverage so people are getting at least their base needs. And we had a list, and I wish I had brought it for this conversation in hindsight, of all the services they get that you and I or anybody can't get through, or it's very expensive.
Oh yeah.
Through private healthcare coverage, the
Medicaid is another one of those issues, like procedural stuff that happens in the State House, where you start to talk. I mean, I would say probably 75 to 85% of voters don't really know what the difference is between Medicaid and Medicare.
Right. I just said it a second ago. Yeah.
And not just like as a mere slip up, but they're just like, I don't know, there's something to do with some government program with healthcare, whatever.
Right.
So when it's difficult if they don't know really what Medicaid is, it's difficult to convey to them just how pernicious it's been, like all encompassing, destructive for the state of Maine across the board, whether it's workforce participation, ruining the healthcare industry. And the healthcare industry, because it's so big in Maine, it's not just the place where you go to get fixed up if you're sick or you need a surgery or something. It's also one of the largest employers in the state. So if the hospitals are struggling because of stupid policies, then they're not going to be giving raises. They're not going to be hiring. They're not going to. There's not going to be increased demand for labor, so that there's upward pressure on wages.
Sure.
So that's a tricky one to have to communicate to people.
Right. And then ultimately, on a unrelated but yet related note, is the providers. Who's going to move here? Who's a new doctor, to set up shop here. If this is, it's so expensive, right? Energy costs are so high. And then where are you going to go? Where the doctors are needed, they're not going to go up there and serve. They're going to go where the people are.
I think the only doctors come here, I'm not super familiar with the exact program, but there's a requirement that some doctors serve like a tour of duty in a rural hospital.
Like a Washington County or something. Yeah.
So that's how like the hospitals in Bangor, that's how they'll get their talented heart surgeons will come here like they're Doctors Without Borders, going into Djibouti or something. Exactly. That's really how we get our most talented doctors, which is absurd considering the the natural beauty and the advantages and the the culture, the way of life that Maine has. If you could change a few of these like very self-inflicted wounds, it would be a dream place for doctors to want to live. But as it is, again, it's like they're landing in a helicopter and stepping over needles, walking into the hospital.
And over the years, I've had some friends that that are actually doctors, and for them to go into, there's no incentive for them to go into business for themselves, right? Because all of the administrative burden. And also, they go to like a Northern Lights or a Mercy or a Martin's Point, because these guys, provide all the administrative stuff. And then once you're associated with them and you're working with them, you got to get through all those barriers to walk into the door. And you're what I mean? So it's like they're incentivized if they do come here to go, they're not going to go start their own new practice. I mean, you know what I mean? It's they're not incentivized to do that, and it's unfortunate. And of course, healthcare is complicated. I get it. I was talking with someone a while ago, and they were like, wouldn't it be nice when you're sitting there watching a sporting event, and you get a commercial, every other commercial of a cheaper healthcare company that will pay for you to survive? I mean, I see so many car insurance companies, dude. It's Progressive, Allstate, Liberty Mutual. We see them all, right? Geico, and they're all combating with each other to see who's the cheapest. You switch with us, and it's like, that's how it honestly should be.
I think we've had price transparency laws passed.
Yeah.
They just don't do them.
They don't use it.
Like this I mean, like if you're asking this government to do,
right.
A transparency website, that's they're terrible at that. Just go look at Maine Open Checkbook.
Yeah, they have to put the data on there, and they just don't.
Yeah, they don't update it. There's no one holding them accountable. MaineHealthData.org hasn't been updated since like 2022.
Yeah, right.
It's like
right.
it's terrible. It should be. If there were other journalists in this state who actually looked at that data or knew what that website was, there might be some more clamor to shame people into updating it. But as it is, there isn't.
Sure.
I guess I'll think that I'll start worrying about the hospitals and their financial predicament when they're not buying up all of the real estate in Portland.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how many houses. How many houses they own.
Maine Health owns like strip malls, hardware stores, pizza shops.
No doubt.
And I get it. It's kind of like close to their campus, but like, are you really on hard times? You're like singing this sob song about how you need another $100 million.
About 20 years or so ago.
The loggers and the lobstermen, and you're buying up all this prime real estate in the old port. Like,
I was doing snow removal about 20 years ago in Portland, and I got a job with this guy who had part of the Maine Medical Center in Portland's plowing account. And so what I was responsible for, I think they had like 66 properties that we had to go plow every storm that was owned by them, and they were supposed to be for, doctors or whatever, interns or whatever people need the housing. And they were like all empty, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're just, you know what I mean? That was 20 years ago. I couldn't imagine how many houses they own now. You know what I mean?
And they've got one of the most robust lobbying efforts.
Oh, yeah.
There's like 13 different associations that all represent these hospitals. And it's
sure.
Geez, really, are you sure you're struggling? Because like I can see on your Form 990, all these executives are making $1.5 million a year at this nonprofit hospital, including the governor's sister, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But, I remember back when the original Medicaid expansion fight was going to happen, right after Obamacare passed, which, I mean, in retrospect, Obamacare was hailed as this like super innovative policy wonk thing that was going to solve healthcare. Sure. All they did was expand Medicaid and make a website for people to shop for insurance. And it cost like $60 billion or whatever. So it was not very innovative at all. It was a really, really dumb idea that was overcomplicated, and we're still dealing with the effects of it. But I remember the Maine People's Alliance coming out with a website targeting Governor LePage for his resistance to Medicaid expansion. That actually like listed out the number of people that were going to die every year if you didn't expand Medicaid. And they had some bogus study probably done by, it was like,
their own
Mike tipping on a napkin or something, coming up with the number of people. But they were like committed to this. And the newspapers started citing it. Like, LePage is going to be directly responsible for 187 deaths a year if we don't. People will die. It's like the Remy video. It's a classic example of that. But I wonder, has there been any effort whatsoever to look at the health outcomes of the decision to expand Medicaid? Because looking around, I guess we're coming up on what was the year of the referendum? Was it 2018?
I can't remember exactly.
That they expanded it. So, but we've had Medicaid expansion long enough now so that you should be able to
look at the data
a little before and after. Like, how are obesity rates doing? How are heart disease rates doing? How are opioid abuse rates doing? Because
I'm going to say not well.
Yeah, it seems like the health outcomes have not improved. And that's generally what you want. They tout the number of how many people are insured versus uninsured, but we don't really care if they fit into one box or the other. What we're looking for is improved health outcomes. And it seems like no one's talking about that. And I have a feeling it's because if they were talking about health outcomes, you would see that this entire Medicaid expansion hasn't been about helping people or improving people's health.
No.
It's been about making money.
More people on the dole, man. You know what I mean? It's getting more people on there. I mean,
and even worse than that, I think. I say it all the time. Medicaid in Maine is like USAID was at the federal level.
Sure.
It's just become this slush fund where the number of different organizations that are so far removed from what we would understand as core healthcare, who are able to tap into that Medicaid pipeline.
Sure.
And once they're able to hook into that money.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, we've asked for the, if you bill Medicaid and you get audited and they find out that you billed for stuff you weren't supposed to bill for, like Gateway Community Services, you get a letter, notice of violation sent to you that shows like, hey, we found all these charges you weren't supposed to bill for. Like, you can't bill Medicaid because you took some migrant kids to McDonald's for $80. That actually happened. And we've asked for all of the notices of violation, but only for amounts of overbilling greater than $20,000.
Okay.
So we're looking for like significant audits that have
ones.
happened in the last 5 or 6 years. And they got back to us and they were like, it's going to take us like 3 or 4 months to put those together.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you $2,000 to get all of those records. And I was like, it's a lot of letters.
Yeah, really.
It's a lot of overbilling of Medicaid by all these groups.
Why is that so substantial?
It's kind of strange, and why isn't it more newsworthy? And what exactly is the administration doing to claw back that money?
Right.
Because, you were talking about your commie friends when they say that, they'd rather pay higher taxes than have to donate to charity or something. It's like, well, let's interrogate that for a little bit, because if money is being improperly billed to Medicaid and taken from the taxpayers, every dollar that's effectively stolen could have been spent on something that actually improves the life of a poor or working class person.
Right.
So by having these corrupt or perverse government programs, you're actually harming poor people and working people.
Right.
So whatever you think you're accomplishing by saying like, pay your taxes and they'll work it out. No, you're actually like doing a disservice.
Well, the polling that you're talking about, like in 23, auditing the government was 70% across the board. You know what I mean? And it's like, and we have an auditor. That Dunlap thing you did earlier this year is, you know what I mean? It's like, that was a damning report. Everyone's still looking.
No one else reported on it.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Bangor Daily News.
Yeah, nothing.
They reposted a Maine Public story, which I don't even know if the guys at Maine Public read the audit. Frankly, I don't know if they can read, anything other than a Janet Mills press release. A bunch of like dickless stenographers.
God bless you.
The Bangor Daily News just reposted that, and then someone forwarded me emails because they contacted the Bangor Daily News saying, hey, like, are you guys going to cover this? This is kind of significant news. Like, this is a Democrat, a nominated / appointed / elected state auditor who's saying this. This isn't like, Americans for Prosperity or the Maine Policy Institute saying that this is happening.
Kind of one of your own.
Like this is like kind of a big deal, but just it's not news anywhere. Like those other outlets will steal my reporting about Chinese organized crime, but no interest in taking a look at the underlying audit there, which showed again, I think just a huge scandal. Just the government just gets to the, there's two mysterious questions, I think. One is what we were talking about earlier, how you've got this fringe, far left minority of 25 to 35% of people with these crazy views, but yet somehow they're ruling us and imposing those views on the rest of us.
Sure.
It's like weird. How is that happening? It's kind of a paradox. And the other one is, LePage's last budget was like for 2 years was $8 billion, roughly.
Sure.
And now we're coming up on, we just passed, if you add Part A and Part
like
B
12
together,
billion,
we're at like $12 billion.
Yeah.
And that's basically where the budgets have been. And then there was an additional $15 billion that came from Biden bucks. Just spin up that
Uncle
COVID
Joe.
printer and sprinkle it over the country.
Sure.
But specifically to Maine, it was about $15 billion. So
where'd
all that money go?
Where is it? It's gone. Yeah.
Like actually, where'd that money go?
Yeah. I hear you. Who knows? Are they these NGOs? Right.
The schools still suck.
Yeah.
The roads still suck.
Yeah.
I guess we've got a new dome on the State House.
Oh yeah.
I mean. I see there's a construction project over at the Blaine House. They're putting up a new fence around the Blaine House, but like Really though, it's a lot of money. I mean,
Right,
I know
right.
inflation's run hot, but
So
like,
if we could get Matt
it's a lot of
Dunlap,
money.
let's get Dunlap to do that like every 90 days, an update. You know what I mean? Like, can we get the state auditor to audit like all the time? What's he doing? You know, like, you know, is he doing good work over there after this report, or did he do that and then like he's good for a while? You know what I mean?
So the constitutional obligation of the Office of State Auditor is just the one single annual report.
Okay, gotcha.
And you know, I like Matt. He's been a guest on the podcast, but I have noticed that if you look at the state auditor's website, there's this weird period from about 2010 to 2018 where the state auditor was doing like lots of audits in addition to just the bare minimum of what it takes to be in the office. Might have had something to do with Governor LePage, but there were like audits of this and audits of that. And randomly, you know, if lawmakers asked for an audit, they would audit something. That really hasn't been happening as much. Maybe it will now. But you know, the audits are hugely time-consuming work. You know, it's not just like you know, they looked over some finances and there's like a back and forth process with the agencies, and so it does take a considerable amount of work.
How corrupt is it? You know, how bad in your opinion? You know, I mean,
10,000 times worse than you believe.
Yeah. You know,
it's awful.
I know when we have these conversations, it blows my mind some of this stuff that you come across.
I mean, the state government is
incredibly corrupt.
The state government's a criminal organization. And the question I go back and forth on is, are the media, you know, bought?
Yeah.
You know, we know
lazy.
That's what I'm inclined to believe. Is just that they're lazy. You know, because it's so easy. Well, there hasn't been a lot of competition in the media. So you know, it's like you've got a handful of TV stations and basically 2 newspapers. So the State House has really like, you know, 2 newspaper reporters, and really maybe like 1 outlet that people actually care about. I mean, the Maine Trust for Local News has so totally faded in relevance that I don't even think that the you know, Democrat leadership.
I
really
saw the
cares
Sunday
what they
paper for
say.
sale the other day, and I was like, they still sell that thing, dude? Like, who buys a physical copy of the Sunday? No offense to anybody who does.
I mean, can you imagine being the last tree to die so that they could print the Sunday Morning Telegram? Awful.
What's the carbon footprint on that thing?
Yeah, but that's how they make their money though, is running that printer. You know, they're a printing press with you know, like a media project on the side. But you know, I tend to come back to that it's laziness and it's access journalism. So it's like if you're getting scoops and skinnies from you know, Jeremy Kennedy, you're not going to report something that's unflattering on the Mills administration. Maybe you know, that inside information doesn't flow to you, but it would seem like your prerogative as a journalist is to publish things that government officials don't want to see in the paper. You know, like they're putting out press releases because that's the narrative they want to project. Your job's not to like quote that and share that with the little people. You know, your job is to find out what's actually going on.
Well, back during COVID when they had those little online with Shaw, you know that. Were you there then?
No, I was not there, but I mean, I dealt with some of the fallout of the Mills administration trying to come up with a credentialing system, which was just like a barely disguised way of trying to
silence
trying to kick the main wire out, which is like, good luck. I mean, you know, I do not need any access whatsoever to the Mills administration to do my job, and it actually, you know, it gives me great joy knowing that I can't just get Judy Camuso to answer a question that I email her and have to, you know, show up and use Jedi mind tricks on her at the Moose Lottery to get her to answer questions.
That was great, by the way.
Fantastic. Another one that the media is just like totally, you know, maybe they don't understand it. Maybe I need to, you know, start translating my story to 9th grade reading level, and they'll be able to handle it.
And then they'll know not to publish it. You know what I mean? You better
that's another one.
Maybe don't do it, and then they will publish it.
Just steal it. Hey, I'll license the video for them. I'm making this as easy as possible for the other guys to steal and to understand. But you do have to wonder though, like the Maine Trust for Local Newspapers got $120,000 through a no bid contract to publish content that was favorable to the Department of Education. It's like, I mean, I don't know, maybe you could have used that $120,000 to just like make the schools better. You know, just crazy idea. You know, and there's also like I was talking with David Boyer yesterday, and he's got a bill to do testing on unidentified human remains.
Okay.
And the fiscal note on it's like $100,000.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you're talking in the grand scope of the budget, it's not, it's a rounding error. It's not a ton of money, but it's like, I don't know, there are better purposes you could put that money to. But
how many? I mean, think of how many $100,000 chunks are in a $12 billion budget. You know, and again, it goes down to where's it going. You know?
Like, can the Press Herald, after accepting money through a no bid contract to run propaganda, I mean, I guess it was disclosed in part because we shamed them over it. After accepting that money, can you then turn around and like do investigative reporting on no bid contracts?
Right. Do you read the Press Herald at all?
No, of course not. I work in the media.
I actually get on there and I just kind of see what they. It's awful.
No,
dude.
I work in
it's
news.
Awful. I was just curious. They give me crap because I'll go on the Beacon. The guys at the office will be like, "What are you going on?" I was like, I just find it fascinating to go on here to be like, what these guys are, what they consider newsworthy. To me is just fascinating. It's like I can't. It's like
people send the occasional story to me from time to time. Honestly, the last like truly interesting newsworthy story I read from another outlet was, I think, when the ex-husband of Aaron Fry's new paramour leaked to the Bangor Daily News what was going on. That was legitimately that's a great find for them, and they went to the mat covering that story. It was a good job on their part.
How long ago was that though?
2.5 years ago. But I'm surprised that they even had the temerity to cover that.
Right.
But and the Bangor paper is another one where a lot of people don't know this, but they've run a public affairs company. Yeah, no doubt. Pulse Marketing, and Pulse Marketing never got any government contracts under Governor LePage. And since 2018, since 2019, they've gotten $2.4 million in government contracts.
Interesting, huh?
I'm sure that the reporters at the Bangor Daily News aren't influenced by that, but like, why didn't they know that? And like, how likely are you to go, investigating no bid contracts and the content of this audit, knowing that like, Pulse Marketing.
Were they doing anything like this? I mean, from firsthand experience when LePage was in there, were they doing any hard work then, you think? I mean,
they were at least in his face.
Yeah, I mean, they would wait for him to say something that they didn't agree with. Or
they were all auditioning for jobs in the government. Yeah, like Tony Ronzio, the former publisher of the Bangor Daily News, now works for Mills. The spokesperson for the Department of Public Safety used to be in the media. The former spokesperson for the Department of Transportation used to be. So they're all auditioning for a cushy job. That's their peak, that's winning the lottery for them is getting some like no show, 2-hour-a-week job for the government. But the specific contracts that the Pulse Marketing, aka the Bangor Daily News, got were in relation to the vaccine mandate for healthcare workers.
Wow.
So I wonder about the moral hazard that's created around that, where the governor is imposing the vaccine requirement on healthcare workers and delays the implementation because the writing's on the wall that this is not going to be 100%, bow down compliance. Yes, queen. Like, there's going to be some issues. People are going to quit. You're going to have to fire people. There's going to be some lawsuits, and the result is going to be a shortage of direct care health workers in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah. So
no one saw that coming.
A smart person, a reasonably intelligent person might say, well, let's just not do this. Yeah. Let's just not do this mandate. Right. Let's make it easy for people to get vaccinated, but not mandate it so that people quit.
Yeah.
But that's not what the Mills administration did. Yeah. The Galaxy Brain Mills administration said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to pay millions of dollars to the Bangor Daily News to run a public affairs campaign to recruit new Mainers and people who aren't already in the state to become direct care workers. So if we just, propagandize hard enough and we start like a Facebook page, then we'll totally offset the direct care workers who are going to be leaving because of the vaccine mandate. I mean, it was stupid and it didn't work. We paid I think it was $800,000, and taxpayers have a Facebook page that's got like 300 followers. Well, like, come work in Maine. Yeah. But the real reason I bring it up though is because like that's a newsworthy thing to me.
Sure.
You're enforcing this mandate, incredibly unpopular policy. You're creating a public health crisis in the middle of a public health crisis.
Right. And you're diverting these funds to this group that's supposed to be in partial press, I guess?
Through a no-bid contract.
Right.
So, like, I mean, I know that the Bangor Daily News did not cover this and did not report on it, but you have to wonder, did this factor into it?
Right.
Like if your company's getting $1 million,
right?
Are you going to look under? Are you going to look under that rock?
Yeah, right. No,
that's, I mean, but that's the kind of the hazard that's created. But you see that through all of these no bid contracts. Frankly, the amount of people who are receiving payments, and Dunlap said, it's not like people were walking out the back door with bags of cash. It was fucking close.
Yeah.
It was I mean, when you think about like the Speaker of the House, Rachel Talbot Ross's sister's nonprofit getting just like $20,000 kisses in the mail, like they didn't even have to work hard enough to carry a bag of cash out the back of the door. It was just like an electronic transfer to their account or a kiss in the mail with a check sent to them. But the lack of fury and anger from people over what exactly is happening is mystifying to me, especially from the Republican lawmakers.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
Like, do you see what's going on?
Yeah. Keep bringing this up. It's okay. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's like I get that there's like there's boys playing girls sports.
Sure.
It is outrageous. It's a violation of the female their rights. We should change that policy. But like, also they're stealing from us, to reward their friends.
So in an ideal world,
there's other aspects.
If we got the Blaine House in both chambers in 26, I would just love to uncover all this stuff and see, and you know what I mean? Just go around and kind of like a mini ICE and go round up everyone from this administration, throw them in jail.
I mean, it needs a doging. I mean, we talked to Bruce Poliquin about this, who has some experience because he was a state treasurer and kind of did more with that office than you have to, did more than any treasurer since has. And I think you do need to have an audit to answer that question. Like, where did all the money go?
Yeah,
$15 billion in federal money, and then you've got an extra like $4 billion every 2 years. So we're close to $30 billion.
Right.
That just like
just
over what the LePage baseline would have been. Where did it go?
Yeah, I think we got a pretty good idea.
There's like there's no new parks or playgrounds. There's no schools. It's not like we built a stadium for the Portland Celtics to come play in. It's like it's very, very bizarre. But I think that when you start to look at how the money was spent through these no-bid contracts, you get at least a glimpse of where that money went.
They're propping up a ton of businesses, all friends, all family, right?
And just the NGO complex.
Yeah.
That's the time and again. I mean, we've reported on this from multiple different angles, but it's the blob ecosystem. It's NGOs get funded by nonprofits. NGOs turn around and elect Democrats. Democrats send more money to the NGOs, and all the while that's happening, the rest of us are just like a tax farm. For this
break
system.
that cycle,
it's like they're producing nothing of
value.
Can
we break that cycle? That's
the question. I mean, I think like 2026 is going to be the make or break year.
It's got to be.
And I know we've talked about the election a little bit, but or elections generally. But are you getting the sense of like 2026? Being a very pivotal election for the state of Maine?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
I've heard from a lot of people that it's like if something doesn't happen here, it's dunzo for me.
I hear you. Well, the way it works, on the conservative side of things is people tend to be the movers and shakers and the activists and those that know what they're doing, who want to participate in these elections and try to chalk up some wins. They can be very factional. It tends to be that way. It's kind of the curse of conservatives, right? Is they're independent thinkers and they're mavericks. You know what I mean? So, we're not going to take marching orders from anybody. But this year, there's just a coalescing of this is it. And this past 2 weeks of what they're doing over there in that building, I know we keep talking about it, is the worst I've ever seen it. And so, I think you're just hitting critical mass where it's like, the average person is sitting up and taking a look. There's so many people on fixed incomes. What are we doing for the veterans? What are we doing with the drug crisis and the opiate crisis? What about the homelessness, the needles? We're talking about health care.
I can tell you what we're doing for the drug crisis. We're just shoveling needles into the homeless camps.
So I think,
and then not arresting the Dominican drug traffickers who are bringing all the fentanyl here.
And I think when you hit that, it's the almighty pocketbook. You know what I mean? A year. Maine Civic Action tried to help a few different people organize to try to beat these budgets. And that's a new frontier, believe it or not, to get the average voter to sit up and take a look and be like, hey, man, June 10th, 2025, kind of a big election. You know what I mean? In your town, you don't go vote this budget down. Your particular property tax is going to go up $1,700 this year. What? You know what I mean? So it's like with these little incremental things that are happening where people are kind of getting pissed off, and then these guys doing what they're doing now, yes, I'm encouraged for next year. I mean, we're hitting a tipping point where I think we're going to be tapping into what people's frustrations are, and wait until, 90 days and these laws start kicking in, and just, you know what I mean? That because, there's one thing's when they pass it and the bad optics of, oh my God, that's a horrible bill, they passed it, or oh my God, that's a great bill, they voted it down. But, you wait till we get out of here and the smoke clears and all this bad shit kicks in, 90 days after they adjourn, and then all these taxes kick in. And we were talking about the cigarette tax.
You're going to have like a Klarna financing plan just to get a pack of smokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
making payments on it.
And it's like, how much money is that really generating in the big scheme of things? Except you're just whacking some, person who just wants to buy a pack of butts.
It's totally fraudulent.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And then, of course, we're just going to drive over, we're just going to drive, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't care. I'll go down and buy 10 sleeves of Zyn over down in New Hampshire and come back over. You know what I mean? If that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do, man. You know what I mean? It's everyone hates that New Hampshire example, but still, New Hampshire has like 0% income tax, 0% sales tax, man. You know what I mean? It's just.
But I think the important part of that, though, is that the supporters of that tax hike on the poor people, like Maddie Daughtry and Ryan Fecteau and Janet Mills,
sure,
proposed a tax on poor people.
Right.
They are simultaneously saying that there's a public health benefit because all these people are going to stop smoking.
Sure.
And the benefits to our healthcare system.
Right.
It's
got to pay for
itself.
Heroin's been illegal for how long? That's working pretty good, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? All you got to do is make it illegal.
Maybe we should tax it.
yeah.
A little fentanyl tax. But they're simultaneously saying that we're going to, smoking is going to be, reduced by whatever, 80%, I don't know.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's going to collect $111 million.
Yeah, right.
So they're saying that no one's going to be paying the tax, but
Sure.
they're banking on people paying the tax.
Yeah.
So the non-smokers might think, well, smoking's gross. I don't mind those people being taxed. But what's actually going to happen is a year from now, maybe we're gonna maybe if it takes that long, we're just gonna have another shortfall.
Yeah,
and then they're gonna come. They're gonna come back and they're be like, suddenly, magically, out of nowhere, we're short.
Worked. It worked.
Unpredictable. Just an unforeseen budget shortfall. So now we're gonna have to tax income.
Right.
Now we're gonna have to tax assets.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna have a statewide property tax.
Sure.
Whatever they can think up and come up with.
No, I'm encouraged for next year. I really am. And again, I'm with you. I know you just mentioned it. Like, shame on us if we can't convert this to wins next year. But a long way to go. It's a long runway. So much can happen between now and then. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. But we got a great opportunity to capitalize on this. And again, it's major thin. I mean, we're talking 3 seats in both chambers. 3 seats, 73 conservatives over there in the House, and 15 in the Senate. All you need is 18 and 76, and you got those two.
Are you counting Rick Bennett in that? I hear he's an independent now.
Yes, I saw that. That might have been calculated how he voted over the past week for you.
Oh, you think? You think?
Just throw that out there.
He first started running for office when I was entering kindergarten.
Yeah.
If he had the secret sauce for making Maine better, I think we'd know by now.
God bless you. It'll be interesting, though, because if he runs as an unrolled, he doesn't have to get on the ballot till June 1st. He's got a little bit of a different runway. It'll be an interesting case study to see how this goes. And then you got to factor in whether ranked choice voting, applies in the general election in 2026. So, but
that could go both ways. I don't know. Doing the game theory around ranked choice voting for the gubernatorial is tricky because I know that the entire reason we have it is because of kiddie porn aficionado Elliot Cutler.
Right.
They got angry that Governor LePage won twice, so they wanted to come up with a way to prevent that from happening. But now, with a nominal R as the independent, I wonder exactly how that's gonna cut, because if there's some Democrats who think like I don't know if I want to continue with the Mills train with Shenna or Hannah or Troy. But I don't know if I can go too far right. I mean, it could work. Work to Rick's benefit, or it could work to the benefit of a Republican.
I mean, I think it's always good when we have a healthy primary. When there's multiple candidates, multiple credible candidates on both sides. I'm interested to see what's going to happen on the left too with this Shenna versus Hannah for now thing with Troy in there.
Troy put out a Facebook reel today saying that he wanted to kiss all the people in New York for electing that
guy,
that socialist.
That's going to be an interesting play. But
He's going to go full socialist, right? That's his lane. That's his lane. He's just going to go full socialist. It's an interesting career arc for him, being like the pro-life, pro-gun Republican 20 years ago, and then all of a sudden he's just like,
and man, that guy's good at like crying on the drop of a hat, like getting emotional with the Bill Clinton.
He is.
And a few times I've seen him speak, I was like, man, that guy's good.
I'm looking forward to watching it when he's frog walked into a jail cell for mortgage fraud.
I love it. Yeah,
I want to sell Jackson for Prison T-shirts.
Oh, I love it.
I shouldn't say that. I want to have him in here to do an interview. I think he's at least a good sport. I think it would be great to have Troy in to do an interview with him. I think he's probably more likely to come in here and join me for a podcast than Shenna is. Shenna, I think, probably wants to take a contract out on me, have me hit.
I'm with you there. But yeah, I mean, I guess it remains to be seen. I mean, there's such thing as having too many people in the primary, you go back and you look. So I mean, and we got a long ways to go.
People get desperate.
More people will announce. There's people that are going to see other people that are going to announce, and they're going to think, well, if them, why not me? So, I know there are some groups that are like trying to actively talk some people out of running, being like, it's not your time, But my point is like, let's see what we get for a candidate from them over there on the left. You know what I mean? Hannah Pingree, I think we all know her politics, but I don't think we know as much about her as we probably do Troy and Shenna right now, if you're the average person. And then over on our side, we know there's more and more people who are going to be, coming forward between now. I mean, and we talked about it earlier. All you got to do is have your signatures in by March 15th. So you don't have to announce for a while if you don't want to. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's a limited. It's the same pool of money, but you can get it from anywhere, and you can there's end arounds for that. So there isn't a fundraising advantage if you get in earlier. But it'd be interesting to see what we each on the left and right produce for actually as a primary winner. Like what do the both parties coalesce around?
Yeah.
Does the left go super left, or do they do something somewhat palatable? Do the conservatives go? You know what I mean? Right wing social justice warrior, and then to see how that goes against right now only one unenrolled. We don't know who else might be coming unenrolled to follow what Rick Bennett did. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that really plays out.
Even as a right wing social justice warrior, I think it would be a mistake to nominate someone who is like totally defined by those social issues.
Sure.
I mean, again, the 80-20 issues gotten a lot of attention lately, but I think like the average middle of the road voter wants to see, like, they just don't want their kids to have to leave the state.
Yeah, I hear you.
To have any hope.
That's exactly why
I told you. That's like the single issue.
My 20-year-old and 16-year-old kids. That's why I do.
Just like have some basic economic growth and opportunity in the state, rather than totally punishing success. I've said, the vision that the left has for the state of Maine is like coastal blue enclaves of elite liberals, super wealthy, and then the interior of the state is a big conservation park, pockmarked with refugee camps. Like that's their ideal, situation for Maine, and that's where all of their policies are pointing us and taking us.
Right.
But I think that you can articulate a different vision, which is not, totally reliant on a tourist economy,
right.
Totally obsessed with crony capitalism for solar panels and wind turbines, but just like the governor put out her offshore wind roadmap, which is hilarious now because we don't have any offshore wind. We just wasted billions of dollars on this, thing that Hannah was she led that, by the way. So all you need to know about Hannah is just look at your power bill.
Yeah, right.
But there should be an alternative to that a conservative puts out that's like, a roadmap, an economic roadmap for the state of Maine. It doesn't have to be a specific set of policies because the offshore wind roadmap wasn't.
Right.
But you just put out a roadmap and say, it'd be good if, in 5 to 10 years, we're like middle of the pack in New England for income tax rates.
Right. Yeah.
It'd be great if we were just like middle of the pack for, per capita spending. Just in the New England states. These are all kind of, similar to us, or maybe even just take New Hampshire and Vermont, but just like set some economic goals and benchmarks that are positive for the state, as opposed to just jumping into and being like, we got to cut taxes.
For me, I think, especially on the conservative side, on the Republican side, it's got to be someone who's competent and capable, and that needs to come across. I can run this state. I can run this state better. I can put us back on a path. I mean, if you look, it was LePage, Sean Moody, LePage. That's our past 4 gubernatorial candidates, right? And Sean, ran a pretty good campaign. He came across as like a non-politician business owner, so you really didn't question his competency and capability. But I think that's very important. You can't, be a novice or need to learn on the job or be defined by specific issues or try to be likable or try to be likable. You know what I mean? You need to be competent. You need to have real world solutions. You need to have a path to economic prosperity. But just letting the people of Maine know that, you know what I mean? I'm competent. I'm capable. I can run this state better. I think that's what people want to see. I think what we're seeing here is a governor that's lying. It's out of control. She's going and getting booed up there. Granted, it's probably not necessarily her crowd, but it's her hometown. I mean,
her crowd was wearing assless chaps in Portland. That's her crowd.
So I think, bringing some seriousness and competency and someone who can get the job done, I think is very important. I think that's going to resonate with the voters,
And I would say, I would just add to that, I agree with everything you said, but also just authenticity.
Yes. Yeah.
Like politics has I think changed with how ubiquitous social media has become. So it's easier than ever to get around the mainstream media or the gatekeepers to communicate with voters. But it's also easier than ever for voters to see if you're inauthentic.
Yeah, 100%.
If you're trying to put on if you're trying to wear like a Mainer skin suit and dance around and be like, I'm just like you. It's
like when AOC runs for president, she's out hunting, out bird hunting.
Exactly. Or Tim Walz, when Tim Walz doesn't know how to load a gun. Exactly. I think there's a need for authenticity for anyone who wants to win.
Well, everyone picks up on that.
Well, it's also a good contrast because you get nepo babies on the left, right?
Right.
We've got. We've still got enough time for like another 2 or 3 kings to jump into the race at this point.
And we were joking about last week. We missed it on No King's Day. You know what I mean? It would have been funny if there was another king running for something.
I was thinking about doing a video, just like showing up with a sign that's anti-Angus King and being like, "Oh wait,
the wrong No Kings."
This is what this rally's about. So I guess what would you're sitting down, you're talking to somebody who's making the dive. They're going to run for the House or Senate. What do you think are the 5, 3 or 5 messages? What's the elevator pitch for taking the state in a different direction? Whether it's an independent Republican. Yeah.
Sure. So to me, it's absolutely.
I don't really care. I just want somebody.
It's fiscal restraint. You got to get taxes under control. I mean, how many years are we going to talk about? I mentioned it before. New Hampshire has, you compare their tax structure to ours, and you don't have to get into the weeds, but you got to make sure people can keep more of their dollars. Parents, what they're dealing with, you know what I mean? Some kind of accountability and transparency at the school board level, at the town council level. You know what I mean? And for state rep and for state senate, we got to be able to see more of what's going on and get this, kind of cleared up and kind of build a little bit of trust in government. You know what I mean? I think those 2 are very important. Small businesses, if you talk to anyone, it's almost damn near impossible to start and run and keep a successful small business in this state. That's very huge. You talk to anybody who's trying to expand anywhere, their local governments are essentially shaking them down. It's extortion. That's a big one. Energy prices. I mean, come on, man. If I read another article that says CMP is going up on there, I mean, it seems like it's every other month. They're like, yeah, it's going up 20%. It's going up 20%. I mean, the cost of energy is ridiculous, and you don't have to get into the weeds, but you might have to. But clean, hydro dam water is clean up there in Hydro Quebec. That's what I'm saying. It's as clean as it gets. It's water.
Yeah, nuclear gas.
Yes.
I don't care. If you have to burn deer or something, whatever we're doing, it's not working. I mean, the solar panels that mills put up, they're all made by slaves in Western China. Let's not act like this is a humanitarian thing.
Yeah, I was like, how when a team goes to win a championship and they lose and they have all those shirts made and hats made and they send them to Africa or something. That's what they're gonna do with these solar panels. They're gonna be like, they're coffee tables. They're coffee. We're sending them down coffee tables.
You know what? I wish it was that smart, because what they're actually doing is subsidized solar panel recycling in Maine. And I only know this because I think I told this story recently on the podcast, but I was up at I was doing like a B-roll video for the Triad Weed documentary, and showing the East Millinocket Mill, which is literally falling, like collapsing on it. The bricks are just crumbling. It looks like Walking Dead wasteland.
Right.
Like, couldn't have a better portrait of just like how screwed Maine is.
Right,
This place that used to employ like 1,000 people with good paying jobs that could become careers, and you could like have a house, 4 kids, and also like a camp out on the lake or something, 6 snowmobiles. But now it's just crumbling in on itself.
Sure.
And I was getting video of it. This guy pulls up in his vehicle, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, well, I'm just getting some video." And I started talking to him. He's like, "Oh, my name's Mike Mishu."
Yeah. Are you serious?
Yeah. he's a town councilman in East Millinocket, former congressman from Northern Maine, obviously, for 12 years. Yeah. But he explained to me that they got money from Congress, and they're going to try to turn it into a solar panel recycling firm.
Oh.
Because all of those solar panels have cadmium telefluoride. Some of them have PFAS, other toxic metals. You can't just throw them in a dump. So not only are we going to pay we're going to pay to buy them from the companies that are making them with slave labor in China. We're going to pay extra to have them installed. We're going to pay extra to have them run and produce more expensive electricity that is intermittent, and we're going to pay to adjust our electrical infrastructure to accommodate the intermittent demand, often in places where they don't need that much demand. And then we're going to pay to recycle them.
We're better off burning the money. That would generate heat. Energy.
Yes.
Just burn the money. What was that place where there was going to be the National Nuclear Waste? Was it Yucca Mountain or whatever?
I thought they did do Yucca Mountain.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Pardon me if it isn't. But
Yucca
that's what they're going to do
Nevada.
now. They're going to have some national repository for
they'd be better off.
It's going to be solar panels.
It's going to be like $120 a panel to recycle these things. And they say that they'll live their lifespan will be 20 years. It's not going to be the case.
And these people that are installing them there, they can't put them up fast enough, man. Like, we haven't even hit the masses yet.
And also, every single one of the boxes is filled with Chinese remote off switches and surveillance devices. Like that's a fact.
They inflate and go up into the sky and turn into surveillance balloons. I'm just kidding.
We hope it's that benign. But as opposed to, we have nuclear waste stored in Maine right now.
Yep.
It's never been a problem. No issues whatsoever.
Yeah, it's like in the basement of Wisconsin.
Yeah, like 99% of people couldn't even find it on a map. It's like, oh, not nuclear. What are we going to do with the waste? Well, we're going to put it in concrete casks. Yeah, and it's just going to go sit out in a field for 2,000 years. And we'll let the aliens deal with it when they discover our remains because we nuclear holocausted ourselves into non-existence. But yeah, the energy one seems like a really, really big one.
Yeah. I think it's always,
everyone's paying an electricity bill.
Yeah, and it's always very simple, right? It's pocketbook issues. How much? What are your taxes going to? Are they going down? Is anyone trying to be responsible for it? What are your bills like? It's like another streaming tax. I get it. You must be living on the high hog to pay $18 a month for Netflix, but there's another tax. You know what I mean? That's going on. So just for you to sit in your house and just enjoy your life, and you're saying, is there an American dream in Maine? I'm a single father. Again, my oldest is 20, but I always got to make sure he's got a soft landing. So I always got to make sure he's got his own room or whatever. For me, one guy on one income to go out and buy a 3-bedroom house. You know what I mean? It's just that's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, there is not housing. Mm-hmm. Say you graduated from college and. Your wife is a nurse and you're a public school teacher or a cop.
Sure. Right.
No, there's no way you're buying anything other than a mobile home that previously had a meth lab in it or something.
Right.
You might be able to scratch together some money, and you're gonna pay $500,000 for it with a mortgage with a 7% interest rate.
Or you could buy a piece of land and live on a van down by the river. Right?
Well, I did that. I tried it. Don't knock it till you try it. It's a very peaceful way to exist.
I bet. I bet you it's great.
You don't have to worry about the Chinese mafia when you're living out of a van. But yeah, it's. I just hope that we haven't passed the the event horizon, because there is a point where I don't think it's just theoretical, but there is a point where you've gone too far that you're not going to be able to come back and to make an economic turnaround, just cutting taxes, rolling back some of the regulations, getting rid of the crony capitalist subsidies for wind turbine companies.
A big project Maine Civic Action's getting ready to embark on is kind of a grassroots advocacy where we're going to take a scorecard of how everyone's voted, and we're going to go into their districts and show their voters how they vote. And again, these people need to know how their state reps and state senators, and even at the town level, how these people are voting, what's happening. You have to get this information in front of them. We just got done talking about horrible the media does. Where are they getting their information from? You were alluding to earlier, we need to have a stronger digital presence, you know? We need to get this information in front of them now, early, often, over and over again. You got to find good candidates that are principled candidates that want to get Maine back on track. You got to make sure you get these good, committed, passionate, principled people. Make sure they're trained well. Make sure they know how to run an effective campaign. Bring their messaging out directly to the voter. Make sure that they're, you know, got the proper resources and get them out there and make sure they got the support they need come campaign season to make sure that they get the wins, you know. So it does start now, but you got to, again, educate these people. How are they voting? You know what I mean? I can guarantee you, we've seen it. We got more people that don't vote with our caucus than people they don't have vote with their caucus. They're lockstep over there, you know. You've seen it before. They'll hold a vote open for 40 minutes on a procedural to take someone to task, to go into Fecto's office and take it behind the woodshed and beat.
Yeah, it's mafia government.
Yes, you know what I mean?
That's what it is.
And it's like they need to, so whether you're a fair-minded lefty or a fair-minded Democrat, if they exist, and maybe you feel like you don't want to go one way with the caucus, that is not an option, and then you vote with the rest of them like sheeple over there on the left. Their constituents need to know that. And so that's a big part of what we're doing over this summer. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done starting right now to make sure we do take advantage in 2026. And again, you know, I think it starts from the pocketbook, like I was saying. You know what I mean? That get the taxes, get the budget under control, make sure there is some kind of transparency, get the power bills down. And I do think, you know, education is a big one. I think the overarching theme of these horrible books that are in the libraries, or transgender individuals reading to 3-year-olds, or you know, you should be able to opt your child out of that. You should be able to know in advance if these things are happening. These are not evil people that want to know about it. So I think the overarching thing is like, what's going on over here? They're asking for more and more money. Enrollment is either stagnant and declining. We're building Taj Mahal schools that are state of the art for no particular reason. Yes, are there schools in disrepair? Sure, but like, you drive, especially on the coast, they're all Taj Mahals, you know. Where are the testing numbers? They're not getting a good proper education.
See, that's what I was going to say. Like, you know what? If you get our testing numbers into like the top 5, drag queen story hours at every school. That's what you want. That's the trade-off I'll take. Like, if the kids can just learn, if they can read proficiently and do math, like, knock yourself out with a drag queen. Get drag queens every single day.
Oh,
but the combination of not being able to execute on what you're supposed to be doing, and then the focus on the drag queens, is just a little bit too much for me. That's my humble compromise I'm willing to offer.
And then you know, when Paul LePage was running in 22, he had the numbers. Well, also great at ripping them off, but we have something like 125, 100. These numbers aren't exact, so I might be butchering them, but 125, 130 superintendents with all the corresponding staff they come with. Okay, and I can't remember what the number is. I think it's 300,000 or so publics. Again, I'm butchering these numbers. And you go to some place like Florida, and they got 25 or 30 for millions of kids. You know what I mean? So the bloated administrative costs with these superintendents, what they're doing, how they're dictated by law firms that represent them, how they're literally badgering these school board members and fearing them, well, you know, scaring them with lawfare.
Yeah,
you know?
well, they've totally inverted the way,
you know,
like the school board, the superintendents were supposed to be beholden to the school boards. The
Sure.
school boards
Yes.
are like the elected highest authority in a school system,
Yep.
but they've totally flipped it around using this Maine School Management Association
Yeah.
and the Superintendents Association. So the school board thinks that like they're there to work for the Maine School Management Association and the superintendent and just rubber stamp what they do. But that's not at all the way it's supposed to be.
And you sit down with some of these people, and it's only I hate to say naivete, but it only is, you know, because I'll sit down with some people who are very principled conservatives, and they're like, well, I'm only coming here 1, 2, 3 nights a month. I mean, this guy's working 40, 50 hours a week. He knows what's happening. You know, we support him. And it's like, no, man, no. You represent the people. You hire or fire that guy. But, you know.
Well, they've also succeeded in, like you said, lawfare.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, they get Drummond Woodson in there, and some guy shows up with a fancy suit and a tie and tells you, no, you have to do the creepy porn books in the elementary school. If you don't put the creepy porn books in there, you're going to get sued.
But anyway, my whole point to that is education. You know, education finance. How these schools are financed is a real thing. It is the we know this. It's the #1 driver of increased property tax across the whole entire state. So whether you look the other way, whether you're okay with tolerance in the school, and whether you're okay with all of this stuff that's happening that a lot of people aren't, you still have to look at what's being done with this money. How bloated is this administration? Are the teachers getting raises? They ask for more and more and more money, but still we're not paying teachers crap, and of course you can get down to so many roads of merit-based and things of that nature. But, if you want to acquire good teachers, you got to pay them. So a long, hard look at how, whether or not you are into the, boys and girls sports, locker rooms, bathrooms, all that stuff that comes down with, you got to look at what's happening with the money there. Why are they constantly wanting more when there's less students? Why do they want these new buildings? Who's getting raises? You're hiring a $120,000 DEI coordinator. I hope they start going all the way since Trump's been president, but there's still some out there.
Curriculum coordinators, social workers, the school-based clinics that they're opening
100%,
up.
You know what I
You're
mean?
right, though. The population of students, I mean, the only schools where the population of students are increasing are the ones where they're importing illegal aliens and non-citizens.
Right. That happened to me down in Saco. It was just a couple of years ago. We have a Hampton hotel down there. It's Hampton, right? Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Call it, it's a flop house.
Yes, exactly. So they moved in. There was 88. The whole thing was full with the asylum seekers or immigrants or whatever.
Illegal aliens who have applied for asylum and received a temporary order.
Thank you very much. 88. There was 88 kids there that were sent to the school system. So they sent me the email and they were like, "You have to reserve a spot for your child on the school bus this year." And I was like, "It's no longer he just gets to take it." Nope, you got to reserve a spot. We don't have enough drivers. We don't have enough spots because of this influx of this 88 students that just fell in our lap. So you have to reserve a spot now. And so I called him up and I was like, "Well, occasionally I'm in a pinch. I have the luxury of dropping him off and sometimes he walks home and sometimes I can pick him up. But, sometimes it's inclement weather or whatever and he might have to take the bus. It would only be 2 or 3 times a year. I don't want to take it away from somebody else. But are you telling me even in these rare occasions, they're like, if you do not reserve a spot right now, he cannot ride the bus." And so I reserved a spot, dude. You know what I mean? And again, it's not a horror story. It's not like, woe is me. But like in Saco, Maine, man, you know what I mean? Like a hotel is full of and then that's the trickle effect that comes down. You know what I mean? It impacts,
but didn't you
1 degree, 2 degrees separation. It impacts everybody everywhere.
But you must have felt good, right?
Yes.
Knowing that like your small sacrifice was solving global poverty.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Yes. I did my part, man. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what we are.
And then I emailed town hall and I said, increase my taxes because I don't want to give the charity.
You just cut them a check. You don't even have to send the email. Just drop a check off or a bag of cash. I'm sure they'll put it to good use. But that's the purpose of our government here. We're here to help non-citizens and advance left-wing crusades. And solve climate change
and
control the weather.
And let the senior citizen whose family's been here for 5 generations. She's on a fixed income. Just let her just get her house foreclosed on because property taxes are through the roof.
She's got white privilege.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
she's had it coming. Okay, how long has she been on Social Security?
Yeah, really. Jeez.
Right? Before we end, one more time, where can people go if they want to learn more about Maine Civic Action? And if someone is listening to the Quatrano special and they want to support you guys financially, they want to pay for palm cards to go out to educate people on the crazy stuff that's happening at the State House. Where can people find out more about your organization?
Yep, www.maincivicaction.org. I appreciate this opportunity. There's a contact button on there. I receive those emails. I'm really responsive. I love hearing from people who reach out to us. Also, there's a donate button on there if you'd like to financially support us. It's a great cause. We do very important work. We're trying to build a bench. We're trying to build a movement. I challenge everyone who's listening to this right now. We need to do more this next election. There's no more Monday morning quarterbacking. I go across and I give these trainings, and a lot of people think success in a movement is how many people show up to an event or how many people come to a meeting. That's not. You're not an activist until you actually talk to a voter. I say that a lot in my trainings. You are not an activist until you talk to a voter. So I challenge people to cordially, respectfully engage thoughts and minds, start talking to voters and say, man, we need to get this state back on track. That's what Maine Civic Action does at every level. So if you're thinking about running for school board, town council, state rep, I am here to help you, provide you all the resources. I'll let you know everything you need to know to make sure you run an effective, a very effective campaign. We'll also help you serve. We have resources as well, but maincivicaction.org, reach out to us there, and I'm happy to follow up with anybody. I also go anywhere across the state to provide trainings. So if you got, there's a lot of tax groups out there that are going they're trying to fight these tax increases. I work with a lot of those folks on how to be more effective. There are concerned citizens out there. There are so many tactics they don't know. They don't know where to start. What programs to use. Well, I was talking with someone today, who wants to try to use a program where they put in their name and their address, and an email goes directly to the whole town council or to the town manager. It's simple stuff like that. You get 50, 40 people who want to do that, and then you build a movement in your town. It can be very effective, and I can help you with simple stuff as that as well. But we need more people talking to voters and engaging government, and that's what we do. So maincivicaction.org.
And so big kickoff event, August 2nd.
Yes, Charlie Kirk. Yes, we're super excited about that. We haven't gone live yet. Where we do have a sponsor reception at a higher ticket price, and we also have a general event, which will be $20 a ticket. So if you'd like to reserve your tickets for that, you can do Erin, ERIN, at maincivicaction.org. She'll follow up with you immediately, and we'll reserve those tickets so you get it. We'll probably be opening that up, and so you can actually purchase them next week. We just got to make sure this is an incredibly popular event, and so we got to make sure all of our sponsors and all of the people that come to the special reception have their seats first. So we're just about done with that. So we just want to make sure it's a very well-run event, and we're very much looking forward to it. So Erin, ERIN, at maincivicaction.org. Let her know how many tickets you'd like, and she'll follow up, and then we'll go live next week, and you'll be able to purchase the tickets if you don't RSVP between now and then. So
all right, cool. And we'll put the information in the description for the podcast too.
Awesome.
And include something in a future Robinson Report Substack, so people know where to go if they want to see Charlie Kirk on August 2nd.
Awesome.
Mike Quatrano, thank you very much for coming in and talking with us. I hope to see you soon. I hope you'll be a frequent guest.
I know, this is great. I love shooting the breeze with you, buddy.
It's so much. It's a much better format for telling people what's going on, and hopefully people have a PM drive time option to listen to get caught up on politics in the state of Maine while they're driving home or driving to work or something. So
rock and roll.
Hey, thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Keep saving the world, or just the state.
You too, buddy. Thanks.